I've been thinking about two words that are often used: surviving versus thriving, or existing versus living. And so when we talk about trauma, we talk about existing, surviving, being in survival mode. What we want people to do in recovery is to thrive, to learn to truly live, not just exist. And that's my desire for everybody when they come into recovery from trauma, is that they'll be able to move from this survival mode, just existing, to truly thriving. But it is a challenge for people from complex trauma. And that's what I just want to briefly talk about. But to give you a context on it, I've always enjoyed the fact that the Greek language has two words for life: bios, from which we get biology, and zoe. And understanding the difference between those two words really, I think, helps illustrate what I'm talking about. So bios, from which we get biology, one is physically alive. Their heart is pumping blood, their lungs are taking in air, their brain is functioning. They're physically alive. But I think all of us have had the experience of meeting somebody who's physically alive, has bios life, but you look into their eyes and there's just a deadness there. There's an emptiness there. It's like it's blank. And you go, they're physically alive, but they're not alive. They might experience superficial pleasures in their life, but they're not deeply satisfied. They don't have true, deep joy. And the pleasures they experience are just very fleeting. And they're always connected to just external stuff happening. It's not the result of a healthy internal life. So bios is they're existing, but they're not truly alive. And so that takes us to the second word, zoe. And zoe means to be alive, not just physically, but to be alive internally. Emotionally, spiritually, your soul is healthy, your soul is content. It means that in every aspect of their humanity, there's life, not just their body. So they're fully human. Every aspect of their humanity, the needs are being met properly, and they are then thriving. They're alive. They feel a deep joy, contentment, and satisfaction. So it's the result of their internal world being healthy and alive. So somebody's contrasted it this way. So bios, biological life; zoe, spiritual soul life. Bios, limited by time and death, whereas zoe is beyond time. It's transcendent of time. Bios is connected to your outer world. Zoe's connected to your inner world. Bios is connected to what you do or what you have, where Zoe's connected to who you are and that you feel deeply inside and are healthy. Bios is measured in years and achievements, whereas Zoe is measured in joy, in connection, in purpose. And so, as I've worked in this field of complex trauma now for over 20 years, what's really stood out for me is complex trauma, people have bios but not zoe. They're stuck in survival mode. They exist, but they're not truly alive. They survive, but they don't thrive. And so what are the components of this existing survival mode? Well, there's ongoing danger. They don't experience a sense of safety at a deep level. There's ongoing hurt and pain. So they have no secure connection. They have no way of resolving their pain. Their needs aren't consistently met, which is part of what's causing the pain. And they have ongoing fear and anger because of those things. And so that puts them constantly in their sympathetic nervous system. So their nervous system is out of balance. Their parasympathetic nervous system isn't able to come in and help bring healing and restoration. And so the priorities of their life then shift, that now it's not about being there for others, taking care of their own needs equally. It's all about, I got to stay safe. I don't want to get hurt again. And so the focus now becomes on the here and now, not long term. And so they develop strategies to try and stay safe, since that's the highest priority. And so it's a variation of fight, flight, or freeze. But here's now where you start to really see what bios is about. In order to stay safe, they then have to not trust people, not connect people, because connection leads to getting hurt. You have to shut down emotions where you don't feel. You can't be open and honest or authentic, because then you'll get hurt. You shut down your conscience, you shut down empathy. And so what you begin to realize is you have to murder your own soul. You have to shut down the very parts of you that make you human, but make you vulnerable to danger and getting hurt. And so you maintain bios, physical life, but you have to shut down Zoe life to survive. And then you have to develop other strategies to get your needs met. So you learn to manipulate, you learn to control, to lie, to wear masks, to fawn, to use people instead of loving them. And then, because you can't resolve your internal life and find true joy there, and you can't get your needs met and have true happiness there, you then grab any fleeting pleasure that you can. And you begin to think that happiness or love is just the release of intense chemicals in your brain, dopamine and oxytocin. And if you get those released in your brain, you feel alive. You feel that you've got life, but it's fleeting. It doesn't last. Many people go even further and they go, I must be able to do whatever I want. It's rules that keep me all shut down and dead and unable to experience all the pleasures that make me feel alive. So I have to be defiant. I have to be able to be my own boss. So what I want you to see is that each person develops their own pattern of trying to cope with this unresolved danger, unresolved pain, unresolved unmet needs. And it works itself out differently, but everyone at some point has to shut down the parts of them that they think make them weak and vulnerable. They have to murder Zoe life inside of themselves and end up with just bios. So they exist, but they don't truly live. They exist, but inside there's a deep emptiness, a deep discontent, a deep pain, a deep anger that they just can't get rid of, that they try to mask by fleeting pleasures. So what are the dangers for people today when they come into recovery? If they've come out of complex trauma, they've come out of just existing and not thriving. They come out of surviving, but they've never really felt Zoe life. They had to kill that inside of themselves. First thing I think it's important to realize is that their existing survival mode, that was their default setting. That was their normal. And so part of their brain is naturally just going to gravitate back to that. They know how to be a robot really well. They know how to shut down things really well. And so just be aware that that tendency happens. But secondly, realize that anytime your nervous system feels stress or danger, in other words, it gets triggered, it's going to want to go back to survival mode, to all the ways of trying to keep safe, all the ways of shutting down what might get me hurt. And so anytime that you're stressed, overwhelmed, tired, exhausted, depressed, anxious, in physical pain, experiencing conflict, angry, your brain wants to go back to survival mode. So you say, okay, I don't think I'm in survival mode right now, but I'm not sure. I don't quite know myself well enough. What are the danger signs that I might be sliding into survival mode? Let me just give you a few. And these to me are so important to become aware of in your own life. First one to look out for is that something in you pulls away from people. You pull away from connection. Connection is what you really need right now, but your brain is pulling away from connection. You think that isolation is a better way to go because connection requires energy. Connection requires presence. Connection requires being vulnerable. And everything in you is pulling towards isolation because it feels safer. So be aware of that. Secondly, be aware that typically you'll get angry more easily. You're just more irritable. You get annoyed at the slightest little things. You lash out at people who inconvenience you. You make demands on people close to you of their time and energy. Some even explode with those closest to them. You resent people close to you for having needs, for making demands on you, for asking you to help. You just have this thought that people should know what you want and just do it. And then people close to you sense that they better not get in your way or you're going to get very angry. And then you change from being assertive to being aggressive. Those are all danger signs that you're sliding back into survival mode. Then with that, you have difficulty being present to people. When you're with people, you want to keep the conversation superficial. Your mind's half there. You're half listening. You're not giving them your full attention. And so being present in the present becomes increasingly difficult because your brain is wanting to dissociate and be in survival mode. The next one is you tend to focus now more on the negative. You just become more complaining, more negative. You see fault with everything. You become more critical. Your brain is just in a darker place. That's a danger sign. And then you tend to avoid. You procrastinate on stuff. You look for ways to get out of stuff. You cancel commitments. All of those things are danger signs that you're back into fight, flight, freeze stuff. Or you become robotic. You just find yourself shutting down your emotions, going through the motions every day, mechanically, without feeling. Danger signs that you're back into BIOS life only. Then another few, you do stuff half-heartedly. Your heart's just not into stuff the way it used to be. You start to engage in numbing activities, just distractions that just keep you preoccupied, busy, or you don't have to think or feel. You have trouble concentrating or sleeping. You become more forgetful. And then you might find you start getting a little bit depressed, or you start to feel some feelings of hopelessness starting to grow inside of you. You just don't trust anybody anymore. That's part of pulling away. You communicate less with people, and you tend to get more rigid in your thinking and more of a tunnel vision. You just see what's in front of you, not the big picture. All of those are warning signs. So if you have them, please reach out for help. Let me just talk about this Zoe life. Healthy living, full life. On the surface, it's kind of a paradox. The stuff that you do to lead to true Zoe life doesn't look like it'll lead to true Zoe life, especially if you're coming out of complex trauma. Because when you are living Zoe life, here's what you're committing yourself to. You're committing yourself to putting boundaries on your life, constraints, saying no to yourself and to others. So now you're going to enjoy pleasures, but only in a healthy way. So you're going to enjoy food, you're going to enjoy sex, but not in unhealthy ways. So you're going to put constraints on yourself. You're never going to do anything that violates love, respect, justice, or truth. That's a constraint you put on yourself. Kind of living by a moral code. That's not about rules, it's about not violating love. And then you're going to say no to a bunch of old behaviors that were convenient, that were kind of like an old shoe that just fit really comfortably. But no, those led maybe to some instant pleasure, but they led to some long-term painful consequences. And then you're going to have to change some priorities. And so instead of just going for money or prestige or image or an easy life or lots of pleasures, you now go, no, I want to get healthy on the inside. I want to do certain things every day to enable that to happen. I want to now balance self-care with loving others. So you are changing the priorities of your life. Then that means you're developing a new value system. So instead of valuing money over relationships. No, I value relationships over money. Instead of valuing image over being authentic, no, I want to be authentic. That's where health comes from. That's a massive shift for people. And a lot of people go, well, that looks like it's going to take the fun out of life. It doesn't look like it's going to lead to happiness, but it will. It leads to Zoe life, true life. And then you move from finding your security and value in all the wrong things. So you go from, it's not my body that gives me security or value. It's not money that gives me security or value. It's not prestige or position. It's being me. It's being real. It's living to take care of my 12 needs. It's finding safe people. All of that becomes your source of security now. And then you got to learn to take care of yourself. You got to learn to meet your own 12 needs. And then as issues come up, problems come up, instead of avoiding them, you deal with them. And that can be painful up front. That can be difficult up front. When you get negative emotions, instead of escaping them, you deal with them. And then, like I said, you balance loving yourself with loving others. You take care of your own needs, but now you realize you give. You want to serve others in a balanced way. And so all of that, for many, goes, oh, that doesn't look like a wonderful life, but it's what leads to Zoe life. Understand, though, this life requires hard work, discipline, routine. It seems restrictive, but it leads to a wonderful life. But you got to do it with safe people. You got to do it by providing a safe environment for yourself. So my hope for you is that you will have Zoe life. Thanks for meeting with me today.